The Duke's dead wife appeared at his wedding to the governess. England, 1852. The stained glass windows of St. Michael's Church filtered autumn sunlight into pools of crimson and gold across the ancient stone floor. The scent of white roses and beeswax candles perfumed the air as the finest families of the county filled the oak pews, their silk gowns rustling like whispered secrets. For Miss Clara Bennett, it was to be the beginning of an impossible dream made real. At 23, a governess of gentle birth but no fortune, she stood in the vestibule wearing a gown of ivory silk that had been her mother's. In moments, she would walk down that aisle and become the Duchess of Thornfield. A title so far above her station it still felt like a fairy tale spun from moonlight and wishes. Through the archway, she could see Duke Arthur waiting at the altar, his dark eyes finding hers across the distance, filled with a devotion that made her breath catch. Today she would marry the man she loved. Oh, astonishing, isn't it? But before we reveal how this incredible moment came to be, I have a question for you. Do you believe that destiny is written in the stars, or do we make it ourselves? Let me know in the comments below, and tell me, where in the world are you watching from today? I love reading you stories. Now, settle in, hit that subscribe button to join our family, and let me tell you the truth about what really happened. Happy New Year! As we enter 2026, I want to take a moment to thank you, wherever you're watching from. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions have changed my life and helped this channel grow beyond my wildest dreams. This year, I want you to remember one thing. Keep believing in destiny. We have so many more stories to tell together. Stay tuned. Now let's go into what really happened. Clara's fingers trembled around the bouquet of white roses as her guardian, kindly old Reverend Matthews, offered his arm. He had been the one to secure her position at Thornfield Manor 3 years ago, when she'd had nowhere else to turn. Now he would give her away to a duke. The impossibility of it threatened to overwhelm her. "Steady now, my dear," he murmured, patting her hand. "You look beautiful. Your mother would be so proud." The organ swelled with the opening notes of the processional. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs as she stepped into the doorway. Every head turned. She saw Lady Hartwell, who had once dismissed her request for a governess position with barely concealed disdain. She saw the Baroness Ashford, whose daughters had snickered when Clara walked past in her mended gloves at the Christmas market. She saw the entire weight of society that had never deemed her worthy of notice. And she saw Arthur. He stood tall and elegant in his black morning coat, his silver-threaded cravat perfectly tied. But it was his face that made her feet begin to move. The way his stern features softened when he looked at her, the slight smile that played at his lips, the love written so plainly there that she felt it like warmth spreading through her chest. She had not sought this. When she'd arrived at Thornfield Manor as governess to his young daughter Emily, she had expected only to teach and care for the child. Duke Arthur had been a widower then, distant and grieving, still mourning the wife he'd lost in a tragic carriage accident 5 years prior. Lady Rowena's death had nearly destroyed him. But slowly, quietly, as Clara read to Emily in the nursery and took her on walks through the gardens, Arthur had begun to emerge from his grief. He started joining their lessons, then their walks. He spoke to Clara not as a servant but as an equal, discussing books, sharing his concerns for Emily's education, seeking her opinion on matters large and small. The day he'd asked her to marry him, she had been certain she'd misheard. A duke did not marry his daughter's governess. But Arthur had been adamant, his proposal fervent and sincere. "I am not asking you to be my Duchess," he had said, taking her hands in his. "I am asking you to be my wife, my partner, my equal in all things. I love you, Clara. I have loved you for months, perhaps longer than I dared admit even to myself. Say yes. Please say yes." She should have considered the scandal. She should have thought of the gossip, the whispers, the social impossibility of it all. Instead, propelled by a love she could no longer deny, she had whispered, Yes. Now, as she walked down the aisle on Reverend Matthews's arm, Clara felt the weight of every eye upon her. Some gazes held curiosity, others judgment, a few, very few, held genuine warmth. But none of it mattered when she reached the altar and Arthur took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture both tender and possessive. "You are radiant," he murmured, for her ears alone. The vicar, Bishop Thornbury, a stern man who had nevertheless agreed to perform the ceremony, cleared his throat and opened his prayer book. The congregation settled into expectant silence. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered together here in the sight of God, and in the face of this congregation, to join together this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Clara barely heard the words. Her entire world had narrowed to Arthur's hand holding hers, the way his gray eyes held hers with such intensity, the future unfurling before them like a ribbon of light. She would be his wife. Emily would truly be her daughter. Thornfield Manor would be her home, not as a servant but as its mistress. It was too much happiness. She had learned long ago not to trust in such things. Life had taught her that joy was fragile, easily shattered. But Arthur was solid beside her, real and warm, and his love for her was written in every glance, every touch. If any person can show just cause why they may not lawfully be joined together, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The traditional pause. Clara released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. In moments they would exchange vows. In moments she would. The church doors exploded inward. The ancient oak slammed against stone with a crash that echoed through the vaulted ceiling like thunder. Every head whipped toward the entrance. Gasps rippled through the congregation. Clara's hand tightened convulsively on Arthur's as shock jolted through her. A woman stood silhouetted in the doorway, backlit by autumn sun. Her dark hair hung wild and loose around her shoulders. Her traveling gown was torn and muddied, as though she had walked a great distance. But her bearing was unmistakable, the lifted chin, the imperious stance, the sense of absolute entitlement. Her voice rang out across the stunned silence, clear and cold as winter ice. "I object to this marriage. That man is already wed to me. I am Lady Rowena Thornfield, Duchess of Thornfield, and I have returned to claim what is mine." The woman who claimed to be Lady Rowena swept into Thornfield Manor as though she had never left. Clara watched from the shadows of the main staircase as servants scrambled to accommodate the impossible. A dead woman returned to life. Rowena's entrance was theatrical. She paused in the entrance hall, one pale hand pressed to her temple, swaying as though overcome. "Thornfield," she breathed, her voice carrying just enough to reach every listening ear. "After so long, I never thought I would see these walls again." Mrs. Dawson, the housekeeper who had served the family for 30 years, stood frozen, her face ashen. "My lady? But you... We buried you. We mourned you. You buried an empty coffin," Rowena said, her eyes glittering with something Clara couldn't quite name. "I have suffered greatly these 5 years. Lost, confused, my memory stolen from me. Only recently has the fog begun to clear." Arthur stood rigid in the doorway, his face an unreadable mask. Emily clutched Clara's skirts, trembling. The child was only 8. She had been 3 when her mother supposedly died. She had no memory of the woman before her. "Where have you been?" Arthur's voice was carefully controlled, but Clara heard the tremor beneath. Rowena turned to him with a sad smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I hardly know how to explain it. My love, the accident, I remember the carriage overturning. Then nothing. I woke in a small village, unable to recall my name, my home, anything. A kind family took me in. I worked as a seamstress, lived as a ghost of myself." She moved toward him, hands outstretched. "Only when I saw a newspaper with your name did the memories begin returning. I came as quickly as I could." The story was smooth, rehearsed. Too smooth. Clara's fingers tightened on Emily's shoulder. Arthur didn't take Rowena's hands. 5 years, he said quietly. 5 years of grief. 5 years of suffering for us both. Rowena's voice hardened almost imperceptibly. But I am home now. We can resume our lives together. Her gaze slid past Arthur to Clara, still in her wedding gown. Once certain complications are removed. Clara's new quarters were in the east wing, far from the family chambers. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a view of the kitchen gardens. It was a governess's room, which was, after all, what she remained. She sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the ivory silk gown, unable to bring herself to remove it. Her wedding dress, the dress she would never be married in now. A soft knock. Arthur entered without waiting for permission, his face haggard. "Clara, you shouldn't be here," she said quietly, not looking at him. "It isn't proper." "Proper?" His voice cracked. "Clara, this morning we were to be married. Nothing about this situation is proper. This morning you were a widower. Tonight you are a married man." She finally met his eyes, forcing steel into her voice though her heart was shattering. "You have a wife, Arthur. A legal wife. Whatever we thought we had, it cannot continue." He crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees before her. "I don't believe her story. Not for a moment. Rowena was many things, but confused and helpless were never among them. It doesn't matter what you believe. She is here. She is your wife." Clara cupped his face, memorizing the feel of his skin beneath her palms. "You must honor that bond. I will not be the other woman in this house. Then leave with me. We'll go to the continent, to America. And abandon Emily? Abandon your duties, your honor." Clara pulled her hands away. "I love you too much to let you destroy yourself." The next morning, Clara resumed her duties with Emily as though the world hadn't ended. The child was withdrawn, frightened by the strange woman who claimed to be her mother. Rowena had taken possession of the Duchess's chambers with alarming speed. She rang for servants constantly, demanding fresh flowers, new linens, hot water at all hours. Clara heard the maids whispering that Lady Rowena was just as they remembered, imperious, demanding, impossible to please. At dinner that evening, Clara sat in her customary place at the far end of the table where governesses belonged. Rowena held court at Arthur's side, resplendent in an emerald gown that must have cost a fortune. "You've let the staff grow lazy, Arthur," Rowena said, waving her fork dismissively. "That girl who drew my bath was clumsy. I want her replaced." "Sarah has served this household faithfully for 2 years," Arthur replied coolly. Rowena's laugh was brittle. "Faithfully? She nearly scalded me. But I suppose standards have slipped in my absence." Her gaze drifted to Clara. In many ways, the illusion of Rowena as tragic victim lasted less than a week. Clara witnessed its dissolution in fragments, like watching ice crack across a frozen pond. It began with small cruelties. A maid dismissed for bringing tea at the wrong temperature. A footman berated publicly for not bowing low enough. Rowena moved through Thornfield like a winter storm, leaving misery in her wake. Emily refused to go near her. When Rowena insisted on taking dinner in the nursery to reconnect with her daughter, Emily had hidden behind Clara, trembling. "Come here, child," Rowena commanded. "I am your mother." "You're not," Emily whispered. "My mother is kind. Clara told me so." Rowena's face had darkened dangerously. "Clara told you? The governess fills your head with stories about me?" She turned her venom on Clara. "How convenient, painting the dead woman as a saint while you worked to steal her husband." Clara had held Emily close, meeting Rowena's gaze steadily. "I told Emily that her mother loved her. If that description doesn't fit you, perhaps you should examine why." The breaking point came on the 8th day. Clara descended the servants' stair and found young Betsy, the scullery maid, sobbing in the corner. The girl's cheek was bright red, the outline of fingers clearly visible. What happened? Clara knelt beside her. I spilled water on her ladyship's hem, Betsy choked out. Just a drop. She said I was worthless, clumsy, that I should be thrown out without references. Then the girl's hand went to her burning cheek. Rage, cold and clarifying, flooded through Clara. She found Rowena in the morning room, examining fabric samples with calculating eyes. You struck Betsy, Clara said without preamble. Rowena didn't look up. The girl is clumsy. She needed correction. She is 15 years old and you left a handprint on her face. She is a servant. I am a duchess. Rowena finally lifted her eyes, and Clara saw nothing but cold amusement there. You would do well to remember the hierarchy, Miss Bennett. Oh, forgive me. You almost forgot it entirely, didn't you? Almost convinced yourself you could be one of us. Clara's hands clenched at her sides. A title doesn't give you the right to abuse those weaker than yourself. Rowena rose, circling Clara like a predator. How noble you are. How righteous. Tell me, did you practice that expression in the mirror? The martyred governess, so dignified in defeat. She leaned close, her voice dropping to a poisonous whisper. He loved you, I can see that. Perhaps even more than he loved me. But love doesn't matter, does it? I am his wife. You are nothing. Arthur's study had become his refuge. Clara found him there late one evening, surrounded by letters and documents, his face drawn with exhaustion. You shouldn't be here, he said, echoing her words from days earlier. But he didn't send her away. Neither should you. It's past midnight. Clara closed the door quietly. What are you looking for? The truth. He gestured to the papers scattered across his desk. Rowena's story has more holes than a moth-eaten tapestry. A 5-year amnesia that conveniently clears just in time to stop our wedding? A village with no name? A family who took her in but left no trace? You're investigating her. I've written to everyone who knew her before the accident. Old servants, her family, friends. Arthur ran a hand through his hair. Something happened, Clara. Rowena didn't vanish into confusion and fog. She left deliberately. As if summoned by their conversation, a letter arrived the next morning. Arthur opened it at breakfast with Rowena present. Clara watched his face go pale, then harden. News? Rowena inquired lightly, buttering her toast. A letter from Mrs. Henshaw. She was your lady's maid before the accident. Arthur's voice was carefully neutral. She says she'd been meaning to write to me for years, but didn't know how. How tedious. What does the woman want? To clear her conscience. Arthur looked directly at his wife. She says that in the weeks before your supposed death, you were having an affair with Captain Laurent, the French officer stationed near Thornfield. The morning room went utterly silent. Rowena set down her knife with deliberate precision. A servant's gossip, she said dismissively. Mrs. Henshaw was always a troublemaker. I dismissed her for stealing, if I recall. She has letters. You wrote to the captain arranging meetings. She found them in your chamber and kept them, unsure what to do. Arthur's hands trembled slightly. She describes in detail how you planned to run away together. How you spoke of faking your death to be free of me. Rowena's mask cracked. For just an instant, Clara saw fury flash across her face before the calculated sadness returned. I don't know what game this is, Arthur, but I won't dignify such accusations. I have been through hell. Were you lovers? Arthur's voice cut like a blade. Did you stage your death to run away with him? How dare you? Rowena stood, her chair scraping violently. I am your wife. I have returned from suffering you cannot imagine. And you accuse me based on a dismissed servant's lies. Then explain the letters. I explain nothing. You will accept me as your wife, as the law demands, or face the scandal of publicly doubting a woman who has endured years of torment. Rowena's voice turned silky with menace. Think carefully, my lord. Your precious reputation, your daughter's future, your name, all hang on your next words. She swept from the room in a rustle of silk, leaving Arthur and Clara alone in the wreckage of the revelation. Arthur looked at Clara with desperate hope. It's not enough yet, but it's a beginning. Rowena's veneer of civility shattered completely after Arthur's confrontation. She moved through Thornfield like a vengeful spirit, determined to destroy anything that threatened her position. Her primary target was Clara. The governess will take her meals in the nursery from now on, Rowena announced at dinner. It's inappropriate for a servant to dine with the family. Arthur's jaw tightened. Clara has always. That was your mistake, not mine. Rowena's smile was sharp as glass. I am correcting it. But the social demotion was merely the opening blow. Rowena began spreading poison beyond Thornfield's walls. Lady Hartwell called on them, her expression dripping with false sympathy. Such a difficult situation, Your Grace, she said to Rowena over tea. To return and find your husband's affection, so misplaced, with the governess of all people. Miss Bennett took advantage of my husband's grief, Rowena said, her voice heavy with manufactured sorrow. I don't blame Arthur, he was vulnerable. But the woman clearly had designs above her station. The rumors spread like wildfire. Within days, Clara couldn't walk through the village without feeling eyes on her, hearing whispers. Seductress, schemer, nearly stole a duchess's husband. Emily clung to Clara more desperately. They're saying terrible things about you. Make them stop. I can't, sweetheart. Clara stroked the child's hair, her heart breaking. Sometimes lies spread faster than truth. Arthur confronted Rowena that evening. Clara heard raised voices from the library, words she couldn't make out, but whose fury was unmistakable. When Arthur emerged, his face was set like stone. He found Clara in the nursery, reading to Emily. I've had enough. We're leaving, all three of us. Arthur, I'll pay whatever price society demands, but I won't watch her destroy you. He knelt before Clara. We'll go abroad. Italy, perhaps. Start again where no one knows us. Clara looked at Emily's hopeful face, then at Arthur's desperate one. For one bright moment, she let herself imagine it. Freedom, escape, a life together away from Rowena's poison. Then reality crashed back. And your estates? Your tenants who depend on you? Your seat in Parliament? She cupped his face. You would lose everything. Emily would grow up knowing her father abandoned his duties for her governess. The scandal would follow us anywhere. I don't care. I care. Clara pulled away, steeling herself. I won't let you destroy yourself, Arthur. I love you too much. That night, Clara made her decision. She packed her few belongings into a worn traveling case, wrote a letter to Emily explaining as best she could, and another to Arthur telling him not to follow. At dawn, she slipped out of Thornfield Manor with nothing but her mother's locket and her dignity intact. She made it as far as the gates before Arthur's carriage cut her off, the Duke himself at the reins. No, he said simply, dropping to the ground. You don't get to sacrifice yourself alone. Let me go. It's the only way. It's not. He pulled an envelope from his coat. This arrived an hour ago. Express courier from London. From my solicitor. His eyes blazed with sudden hope. He's found Captain Loron. Arthur's London solicitor, Mr. Pemberton, was a meticulous man who had served the Thornfield family for 3 decades. He sat across from Arthur and Clara in a Mayfair office, his expression grave. Captain Loron was not difficult to locate, Your Grace. He lives in Paris, having left British service after a gambling scandal. Pemberton adjusted his spectacles. I took the liberty of traveling there personally. The captain was forthcoming. What did he tell you? Arthur leaned forward. Pemberton opened his portfolio, extracting a sworn affidavit. That Lady Rowena approached him in the spring of 1847. She was bored with country life, resentful of your devotion to estate management rather than London society. They became lovers within weeks. Clara felt Arthur stiffen beside her, but he said nothing, waiting. They planned her disappearance together. The carriage accident was staged. The driver was paid off and has since died, conveniently. Rowena's body was never recovered because there was no body. She went directly to Paris with Captain Laurent. And lived there as his wife, Arthur said quietly. Mrs. Henshaw's letter mentioned marriage. Indeed, they held a ceremony, though Captain Laurent admits it was invalid given Lady Rowena's existing marriage to you. Pemberton's finger traced down the document. They lived together in Paris for 3 years. The captain describes it as tempestuous. Lady Rowena was expensive, demanding, prone to dramatic scenes. When his inheritance ran dry and his gambling debts mounted, she became intolerable. So she left him, Clara said. Not immediately. First, she convinced him to take out additional loans in her name. When creditors came calling, she vanished with the money. That was 2 years ago. Pemberton looked up. Captain Laurent has been searching for her intermittently ever since, hoping to recover the funds. He was quite willing to provide testimony once I explained the situation. Arthur sat back, his face pale. She abandoned me, faked her death, lived with another man as his wife, then stole from him and disappeared. And now she's returned to claim rights she forfeited 5 years ago. There's more. Pemberton produced another document. The ceremony in Paris. Captain Laurent believed it a romantic gesture, but Lady Rowena insisted on proper documentation. This is a copy of the marriage certificate filed with French civil authorities. Arthur stared at the paper. She married him, while still legally married to me. Bigamy, Pemberton confirmed. Grounds for immediate annulment under both English and ecclesiastical law. The original marriage is voidable due to her fraud, abandonment, and subsequent bigamous union. For the first time in weeks, hope sparked in Arthur's chest. How quickly can we proceed? I've already begun the process. With Captain Laurent's testimony, the evidence of fraud, and this marriage certificate, the ecclesiastical court will move swiftly. 6 weeks, perhaps 8. And Rowena? She must be informed. I recommend doing so publicly, with witnesses present. Her response will be significant. Arthur looked at Clara, seeing his own hope reflected in her eyes. Then we return to Thornfield. Tonight, and tomorrow we end this. Arthur had the drawing room arranged precisely. Chairs for family, the vicar, magistrate, and Pemberton. Emily sat close to Clara, holding her hand tightly. Rowena swept in last, her expression already suspicious. What is this gathering? She stopped, seeing the assembled company. Am I on trial in my own home? Please sit, Rowena. Arthur's voice was steady, commanding. There are matters we must discuss. She remained standing, arms crossed. I have nothing to discuss with these people. Then you may simply listen. Arthur nodded to Pemberton, who rose and cleared his throat. Lady Rowena Thornfield, I have been engaged to investigate the circumstances of your disappearance in 1847 and your subsequent reappearance. My findings are definitive. Rowena's face went pale, but her voice stayed sharp. What nonsense is this? Pemberton laid out the evidence methodically. Mrs. Henshaw's letters proving the affair, the staged accident, Captain Laurent's sworn testimony, and finally, the French marriage certificate. The room went silent as death. You married another man, Arthur said quietly, while still married to me. That is bigamy, Rowena, a crime and absolute grounds for annulment. Rowena's composure cracked. That French fool lies. He's bitter I left him. He has documentation, witnesses. The French civil authorities have the records. Pemberton's tone was implacable. There is no doubt. Rowena whirled on Arthur. You would take his word over your wife's? You would disgrace your family name with such scandal. You disgraced it when you faked your death and abandoned your daughter. Arthur stood, and Clara had never seen him look more like a duke. You returned not out of love but desperation. You thought I would have no choice but to accept you. You were wrong. I am your legal wife. You were. Your fraud and bigamy have voided that bond. Arthur pulled a document from his coat. Pemberton has filed for annulment. The ecclesiastical court will rule within weeks. Rowena's mask shattered completely. You self-righteous hypocrite. You want to be rid of me so you can marry your little governess? The scandal will destroy you. The scandal is yours, not mine. I am the wronged party. She turned wild eyes on the assembled witnesses. You'll believe this? That I would risk everything for a French officer. Bishop Thornbury spoke from his chair, his voice heavy with regret. I examined the evidence, Lady Rowena. It is incontrovertible. Your actions are unconscionable. Even then, Rowena might have maintained some dignity. Instead, she unleashed her venom. Fine. You want truth? I hated being your wife, Arthur. Every dull dinner, every tedious estate matter, every moment trapped in this provincial hell. Laurent offered me passion, excitement, life. Yes, I staged my death. Yes, I married him. I only came back because he proved as disappointing as you. Emily made a small sound of distress. Rowena didn't even glance at her daughter. You want her. Rowena gestured viciously at Clara. Take her. She's welcome to this prison and you along with it. Arthur crossed to stand beside Clara, taking her hand publicly. I intend to. Once I am free, I will marry Clara Bennett with all the honor and ceremony you denied our first attempt. She is worth 1,000 of you. Rowena's laugh was bitter, broken. Then I hope you'll both be very happy in your righteousness. She looked at Pemberton. What do you want from me? Silence? Disappearance? A settlement will be arranged, Pemberton said. Sufficient for you to live quietly elsewhere. In exchange, you will not contest the annulment. And if I refuse? Then Captain Lawrence's creditors will be very interested to learn your location, as will the French authorities regarding the funds you took. Pemberton's tone was almost gentle. Take the settlement, my lady. It's generous, given the circumstances. Rowena stood frozen, trapped. Finally, she nodded once, sharply. Send me the papers. I'll sign them. She looked at Arthur one last time. I hope she's worth what this will cost you. She is, Arthur said simply. She always has been. The legal proceedings moved with surprising speed. Captain Lawrence's testimony, delivered via deposition, was damning in its detail. The ecclesiastical court examined Rowena's bigamous French marriage certificate, heard witness accounts of her deliberate abandonment, and declared the original marriage voidable due to fraud. Rowena remained at Thornfield only long enough to negotiate her settlement. Pemberton proved ruthless. She would receive an annual income sufficient to live comfortably abroad, but nothing more. No jewels, no property, no claim to the Thornfield name. You're casting me out with scraps, she hissed during the final meeting. I'm giving you more than you deserve, Arthur replied. Take it or face prosecution. She signed the documents with a hand that shook from rage, not remorse. On her last day at Thornfield, Clara encountered Rowena in the portrait gallery. The former Duchess stood before her own portrait, painted shortly after her wedding 15 years earlier. Young, beautiful, filled with promise. I was 17 when I married him, Rowena said without turning. Sold by my family to secure their debts. Arthur was kind, but kind isn't enough when you're trapped. She finally looked at Clara. You think you've won. You think love conquers all. But this house has a way of devouring bright young things like you. I'm not you, Clara said quietly. I choose to be here. I love him, and I love Emily. That makes all the difference. Rowena's laugh was hollow. We'll see. Give it 5 years of country tedium, of being a duchess with no real power, of watching him age while you're expected to remain grateful. She moved toward the door, then paused. But perhaps you're right. Perhaps love is enough for some people. Her voice dropped. I hope so. I truly do. Because if it isn't, you'll have sacrificed everything for nothing. Then she was gone, her carriage disappearing down the drive, leaving only the portrait behind. Emily found Clara still standing in the gallery. Is she really gone? Really gone? Forever? Forever? Clara knelt to embrace the child. How do you feel? Emily considered this seriously. Sad. Not for her but for Papa. He thought she was dead. Then she came back and was horrible, and now she's gone again. That's a lot of losing the same person. You're a very wise little girl. Will you marry Papa now? If he still wants me. Emily's smile was radiant. He does. He told me. He said you were the best thing that ever happened to us. That evening, Arthur found Clara in the garden, where they'd first admitted their feelings months ago. He didn't ask. Simply took her hand, dropped to one knee again and said, Clara Bennett, will you marry me? Properly this time, without ghosts or interruptions. She pulled him up and kissed him, tasting salt. His tears or hers, she couldn't say. Yes, she whispered against his lips. Yes, always yes. 6 weeks later, autumn had deepened into early winter. The first snow of the season dusted Thornfield's grounds as Clara dressed for her wedding in chambers that had once been Rowena's but were now wholly her own. This time there would be no grand society affair. Just family, true friends, and those who had stood by them. The ceremony would take place in Thornfield's private chapel, witnessed by people who loved them. Mrs. Dawson helped Clara into a new gown, deep blue silk the color of twilight, with delicate silver embroidery. Emily, resplendent in white and silver, would be her only attendant. You look beautiful, Clara, Emily said, her eyes shining. So do you, sweetheart. Clara adjusted the girl's flower crown. Ready to become my daughter officially? I've been your daughter for ages. Now it's just real on paper too. They descended together, and Clara's breath caught as she entered the chapel. Candlelight turned the ancient stone golden. White winter roses filled every alcove. But it was Arthur, waiting at the altar in the same morning coat he'd worn months ago, who made her heart race. Bishop Thornbury, who had been present at both the interrupted ceremony and Rowena's exposure, smiled warmly. Dearly beloved, he began, and this time, there was joy in the words instead of formality. Clara barely heard the ceremony. She was lost in Arthur's eyes, in the way his voice shook slightly when he said, I do. In the weight of the ring sliding onto her finger. A new one, not Rowena's, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Arthur pulled her close, and the kiss was everything their first had been denied. Passionate, relieved, joyful. The small congregation erupted in applause. They signed the register together, Arthur's hand covering hers. Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Thornfield, or rather, His Grace the Duke of Thornfield and Her Grace the Duchess. But titles didn't matter. What mattered was Emily throwing her arms around both of them, laughing, and Reverend Matthews dabbing at his eyes, and Mrs. Dawson declaring it the finest wedding she'd ever seen. At the wedding breakfast, Arthur stood to make a toast. To my wife, he said simply, who waded through scandal and suffering with grace I didn't deserve, who taught me that true love is patient, kind, and worth fighting for. And to my husband, Clara added, rising beside him, who proved that honor and love aren't opposites but partners. They raised their glasses, surrounded by warmth and love, and Clara realized something profound. The interruption that had shattered her dreams months ago had actually saved her. If Rowena hadn't appeared, They would never have known what their love could survive. They would have married in ignorance instead of choosing each other with full knowledge of what it cost. This wedding, quiet, small, witnessed by few, was infinitely more precious than the grand ceremony could have been. As evening fell and the celebration wound down, Arthur led Clara to the portrait gallery. Rowena's portrait had been removed, replaced by a painting Arthur had commissioned in secret. Clara reading to Emily in the garden, both bathed in golden light, both smiling. "This is what Thornfield Manor should remember," Arthur said. "Not the ghost of a woman who never wanted to be here, but the woman who chose to stay, who chose us, who chose love." Clara leaned against him, studying the painting. She looked happy in it, truly happy. And she was. "No regrets?" Arthur asked softly. "Not one." She turned in his arms. "Though I must say, this has been the longest engagement in history." He laughed, the sound rich and full. "Then let's not waste another moment." They climbed the stairs to their chambers, theirs now, together, and closed the door on the past. Outside, snow began to fall in earnest, blanketing Thornfield in white. Inside, Clara and Arthur began the life they'd fought so hard to claim. Emily knocked an hour later with a question about her studies, and they let her climb into bed between them, the three of them talking and laughing until she fell asleep. Arthur carried his daughter back to her room, and when he returned, Clara was waiting at the window. "What are you thinking?" he asked, joining her. "That the dead wife who appeared at our wedding was the best thing that could have happened to us." She smiled at his shocked expression. "She forced us to prove our love was real. And it was. It is. It is," he agreed, pulling her close. "Forever." And this time no ghosts interrupted. No doors burst open. No voices called from the past. There was only love, hard-won and true, and a future waiting to be written. The end. Dear viewer, what part of this journey touched your heart or surprised you today? If you'd enjoy more historical love stories filled with healing and hope, let me know below. Please like, subscribe, and share to help others find these stories too. Thank you for spending your precious time here. Your next beautiful story is waiting on the screen.